Okay, I think we're live now. I think I have everything set up properly and prepped for this. um, this one is going to be a little bit different, but we are starting to work on my spell language, which that is, oh, I should have the hat. Hold on. We need the hat. The hat is very important because it's a witchy spell language, and I think it's important. Also, hello everyone that is here. Hello, hello. Okay, so first, updates. I figured out how to use my camera, which is why I'm probably gonna be like looking back and forth a lot. I figured out how to turn it on to not auto turn off. So it should be better quality for this, which will be good. Also, we are not going to be looking at my code today, or setting any of this up in code at all right now. We're going to use Photoshop because I'm gonna basically, I think, be like diagramming out how I want things to work and talking through it like that, just because like otherwise I'm just like writing in a bad visualizing MD file like text, and that's not super duper helpful. Yes. That is vital. Exactly. It is very, very important. Yes. Um, so that's one update that we're doing. Yes, 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 we're doing that. We're doing that. Also, I talked about this earlier, but we are wearing the No Mistakes, Just Happy Accident shirt. So that is the vibe for today. That and witch hat, they totally go together. They go together. Um, okay, so let me share my screen. Let's see if this works because I'm using two different computers. So what you say, will it be more visually accessible to broader auditory? I'm not quite sure what that means. But yes, it should be easier to see, hopefully. Like I can change the size of how we're showing it on Photoshop. But let's see. How do I do this? Is this it? Yes. Okay. So I think this is my Photoshop file. So like you should just see me like moving it around to different parts of it as we sort of map it out and everything, and talk to this. But yeah, I hope the diagrams will make sense to everyone. Like they'll have Conlanging stuff in them to the like level that I comprehend them anyway. Like it won't be, but it's not going to be code. We're going to be talking about like concepts and the structure of the spells and all of that mainly. So that should be a little bit easier for everyone to follow along with, and also easier for me because the code is mainly for like generating options. Like it's not really like, I definitely don't have it set up to do anything grammatical. So a lot of this series may be more like this type of thing, or maybe just like making out the tables and stuff, and a smaller portion in the code, but we will see how that goes. Yes. Okay. So here, and I just have like a big page that I'm going to be zooming in and out of and moving it around. It looks like there's a slight lag between what I move on my little drawing tablet and what shows up on the stream, but just keep that in mind. But basically, right, we are making a spell language. And I want to explain some of the concepts, like high level concepts of how the spell language works, because it affects how we're going to build the language. So in my world, right, that I'm building, I have two realms. And you could sort of think of them as like different dimensions, but the realm with magic in it and the realm with, like the realm that we live in. And by using this language that we're going to build, this magical spell language, that can be heard across the barrier between like realms or dimensions and can influence the magical creatures there to do things for you in the normal realm. Yeah, higher level concepts are good. I agree, Elizabeth. So yes, so basically the spells don't make things happen. The spells make magical creatures make things happen, essentially, is the vibe here, right? So then once people say something, a spell in the magic language, which controls the spirits in the magic realm, they can then influence the world as like wind spirits, sort of. Think of that as like for high level concepts. So let me scoot over a little bit. Okay, there we go. So the way this is used in the story is essentially the magical language was a secret. And it was only known by a very small set of people because it was like if you knew the language, you had power. And so it was very secretive. It wasn't written down phonetically, right? Like there was no written language to it, right? Because the writing would have no impact on the barrier, right? It's just spoken language. So they wrote it in a code language, the people that did understand it. But they are all gone now, so there are no native speakers or like fluent speakers of this language at all in that they know of, right? So part of the plot is they have these grimoires that are written in code and they have to sort of translate it. And like there are some that have been translated a little bit, but they're sort of secretive. So like them translating bits is going to be part of it, but we don't have to worry about larger pieces of the language other than what would be applicable in the spells because there aren't any native speakers or any fluent speakers. So at some point later on, if that becomes a thing, I could build out those sides of the language more, but we're going to be really focusing on the exact structure of those commands and those spells, which will hopefully make this less of an overwhelming process for mostly me because it's a lot. It's a lot. And I'm still struggling with it. So the first step that normally I see people going through for, see, is this right? Can you see that? Oh no, I'm so sorry. I like rotated it. There we go. That I see people going through for creating languages is like phonology and phonotactics. And I actually want to save that for the most part for later, right? Because that's when we're actually going to be like generating the words and morphemes and stuff to start fitting some of these cases. And I don't think we need to do that now. So I did roughly brainstorm how I want the phonology to work, like the sounds. So yes, yeah, the gods, obviously. So I do have like two goddesses that would be fluent speakers, and I think I actually want to name the language like goddess tongue or something like that in probably my main island's language, just because they would be the people naming it, not the speakers of it. But yes, they are out of the scope of the story, so we're not worrying about them. And obviously, all of the like wind spirits or whatever of the other realm can speak this language too, but they don't get to converse in the plot of this story. So yes, so we have limited plosives. I basically crossed out all the plosives other than like T, D, and K, and I don't want them to start and end words, just because like it has that like slightly harsher sound where I feel like if it's mellowed out by other things around it, it feels less harsh. And if this is for wind spirits, it makes sense for it to feel more flowy. So I crossed out the sort of back of the mouth sounds. Ooh, 3-vowel system and a really simple consonant inventory. Absolutely love languages like that. Yes, I'm trying to keep it simple. Very, very simple. So I think this will help, and we're not going to be touching any of this today, I don't think. So it doesn't really matter. I just wanted to show you where I am right now, but this is sort of what I'm thinking. So that's sort of like all we're doing. And then okay, so this is not working as well as I thought it would, me just taking notes and moving it around. But big high level ideas, because I did start to brainstorm about this like a year ago when I started doing Conlang research and got as far as to be like, wow, this is kind of a lot. I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm really overwhelmed. I'm just going to stop doing this. So we're picking up some of those notes and we're going to try to carry forth with them. But yeah, so I spelled grammar wrong. That's helpful. But high level syntax, grammar, ideas. It's going to be polysynthetic, which basically means there's going to be a lot of like inflection on everything. So like instead of having like, I don't know, I am a bird, right? Where all of those little pieces of speech are separate, like all your pronouns are separate, all of your like, I don't really even remember other words, but like all your little bits of speech are mostly separate words in English, whereas in like, I think German is more like this, or there's that one, oh, what is it? It's like, isn't it a Nordic language? I think that has those words that are like really, really, really long, and they basically contain all the information of entire sentences in them. It's going to be more on that end of the spectrum because I like the idea of the spells being less words and being a little bit more condensed and having these like little longer bits, but not that long. Like they're not going to be crazy. They'd still be like you look at it and you can kind of sound it out pretty quickly. So that's one of the goals for this. And then the other one is that I'm going to be using agglutinating. which is sort of like every little bit of speech or bit of syntax is going to be like a separate morpheme or separate affix instead of having ones that combine things. And that will just make it simpler for us. So we can be like, oh, this is what these pronouns are. This is what it means to be in the future tense. And we don't have to have like super complex charts of like, this morpheme means it's future tense and the start aspect and in relation to this over there, or, you know, like we're going to keep it simpler, try to do it like piecemeal, small, manageable, understandable chunks. Yes, Germans do construct words in that way a lot. Yeah, I know German does it a bit. I don't know if they do it as much as we're going to do it here. I think I'm not super familiar. I probably should have asked my husband because he's been learning German, but yes. So, oh no. Okay. This is the concept, and this is what we're going to keep coming back to for what this is going to look like as a spell. And this is sort of a note of, do I have it from before? My notes from like a year ago? Yeah, so I basically, I don't know if you can see this at all. These are my notes from like over a year ago, and I just sort of wrote it up here so it would be more readable, but we're going to have essentially an indication of the force, right? So this is the spirit or magical entity, right, that you are evoking, conversing with, right, talking to, and then have something that essentially means like I summon, or I, to some degree, right? Like you could do like, oh, you know, I welcome you to come and do this thing, or I would like you to come and do this thing, or I command you to do it, or I very strongly command you to do it. And so those apply different levels of like magical persuasion, I guess, towards the magical entities, and would also probably, like there's magic system concepts in there where it would take like different amounts of magic to do different levels of force on different levels of spirits, like all that mumbo jumbo that we don't need to worry about right now. But you have this, and then you have a space, and then your action, and then a bunch of like, what are the suffixes or affixes that basically apply all the other little bits. So like, I want you to do this to me, to that person, to this noun, to that I'm pointing to, or around what I'm pointing to, or something like that, right? Like that's sort of the high level vibe. Zephyr? I don't know what Zephyr is. Oh, I summon you to bring chill to me. Yes, exactly. That is exactly what, yes. That is an example of what the spell language would be, a spell, right? And so, yeah, so this sentence structure is basically what we need for right now. All those commands are going to be fairly limited due to the magic capabilities as well. So like, I'm not going to need to come up with a spell for like, oh, hey, like every third Tuesday, I want you to go like water the garden until Bob walks his dog, right? Like that would not work in the magic system. So we don't need to be able to do that level of like compound sentencing. We should be able to keep this more condensed, I think. So the other thing I have here before we start a bigger file is, let's see how well you can see this. We'll start over here. Okay, I'm done moving it. Is this readable? Can someone let me know if this is readable or if I have to zoom in more on different sections as we go through it? Fun concept, different levels. Yeah. I think it'll be really cool, and it will add a lot of culture building and society building with who uses what kinds of spells when. Like it ties into like the different roles and how different types of people interact with the magic, which I think will be really fun. Okay, it's readable, plenty readable. Okay, perfect. It's readable. Okay, so I wrote this out again, and I was chatting in the Discord chat, the Conlanging section, mainly with Formica, so shout out. He's in the, there in the chat. Yes, so shout out to them for helping me out a lot with this. Just to kind of understand what even I was looking at with this, right, and what I was trying to do, because this was like a year ago, and I was like, this looks like I really sort of understood something when I was putting it together, but I don't really remember now. So I took some notes to get us started and to give us like a starting place. And so let's start from the left. The first thing I have here, right, is that spirit indicator. And this is like a proper noun, right? This is going to be the actual name of the spirit. You have to say their name to kind of get their attention, or like have your magic force them, right? Like you say their name. And then we also had the fun suggestion of it being in the vocative case, which is like, what was the example you used? It was like, oh, Shiva, like that. Oh, so-and-so, there's not a direct English translation, but that's the vibe. And I think that really, really fits here, where you're saying like, oh, spirit so-and-so, I evoke you to listen to what I'm about to say, or to be bound by the magic I'm about to speak, right? So we will have to have a vocative noun case at the very least. And then the next two sections, having a high-level spell sentence structure be sort of a command. In some languages, that's an actual, like, I think there's like verb cases. Is that the right word I'm looking for? Case? I'm really bad with grammar, which is going to be so helpful for this process. But like where there's a version of the verb that makes it a command, like when you say sit down versus like you are sitting, or they sit, or they will sit. Like if you say sit down, that version of the verb has that command in it, right? That like imperative mood, I think. Cases are for nouns. You're thinking of verb moods. Yes, I am thinking of verb moods. That's what I meant. Thank you. Yes. So that imperative mood is what gives you that command. So here, instead of having that baked into forms of the verb, it is a separate like clause almost, right? So the first section here, we have the imperative clause, which is basically giving us that imperative mood. And then the next section is a subordinate clause, which is basically what the command is, right? So the first section contains a subject marker pronoun, which is I, right? And I've been thinking a little bit about pronouns, because I think I'm going to do it slightly different than most of the pronoun systems, because it doesn't make sense to have gender, but it also doesn't make sense to have little distinction between like animate versus inanimate objects, right? Because like they can both be a plural people or plural it, right? So I think I might do something where it's like first person, second person, third person, where third person can be both like a person or a thing. I don't know. We'll get there, but you have that subject marker, which is like a pronoun, and it goes on the beginning. And then you have whatever the word is going to be for that mood, right? Like that's the mood, imperative mood indicator for summoning or commanding. And then we'll have a little affix marker, which will have like the degree of the mood, essentially. Let's see. Animacy can be really useful for identifying or agreeing verbs with certain objects in the clause, but a lot of languages just have person and number marking. Finnish and Turkish are both like this. Yeah, that makes sense, honestly. Yeah, because then you can be more vague. Okay, that makes sense. How about a pronoun based on the scale of influence or size of effect? So we'll have to think about that. For this part where we're just saying the subject, that wouldn't be needed, that sort of distinction, because it's just saying like I am summoning you, or the only alternative for this part of the spell would be we, if it was more of like a ritualistic thing, like we are summoning you versus I am summoning you. Just because these are going to be used in very, very limited context, right? That just drop number marking and only have person. Yeah, that would actually potentially make sense too. Although then I wouldn't have like the I or the we distinction, which I'll have to think about if that would even be needed. Because if you have a group of people, saying the same spell at the same time, that would probably be as effective. So honestly, I could probably just ignore plurality, but I think we'll have to wait until we get into other use cases for pronouns and then decide if it would be useful or not then. But that's good to have it as an option. So yes, you have the degree marker at the end, which is, I believe, according to my Googling, an adverbial phrase, I think. But it would be very limited, just like basically the strength. So that whole first bit is basically just saying, oh, spirit, like I evoke you to, be bound by, to this degree, the, command I'm about to put forth, right? That's sort of what that would mean. And then the last part, right, the subordinate clause is going to be the main bit of the spell, right? Like what's actually happening. You could have that same first bit if you're commanding the same spirit, like for basically everything, right? Like, so that's probably something from a translation purpose that they would figure out really, really quickly because it's so similar in all the spells that they'd sort of pick up on those patterns, I think. But this last part is going to be the more interesting bit. So it starts with an optional subject marker affix, which I think would be optional if you have the very first one at the beginning, right? That like topic indicator potentially, where you've already said their name to evoke them, right? You could probably drop that because it's unnecessary, but some sort of subject marker affix, and then you have whatever that verb stem is, right? All the bits of the verb that make it unique. Maybe it'll be like multiple morphemes. I don't know. We'll figure that out later. That'll be like one step, is to figure out what exactly that will be and how we're going to form verbs and all of that sort of thing. Let's see, in English it's an adverb, but here it's more like an intensifier on the verb. Yes. Yeah, I think that's what it is. So that's more of, intensifier. Yeah, so that's sort of what we're looking at there. And I apologize, my handwriting looks awful. Some incantations I've seen in fantasy also state the level of authority of caster / patronage marker. What do you mean by like, is that authority of the caster or patronage marker? So like what your level of being, say, like a witch or whatever would be in this case? Could be interesting. But yes, so we have the subject marker, so which would be you, right? The person that we've already established talking to, your verb stem. And then this is the part where it gets complicated. Some level of markers and affixes to encode all the other bits onto that verb. And so I wrote down some of the examples from before and kind of tried to mark what they are, if that makes sense. So like if you're saying, I command you to bring cold to me, right? So that to me part, that to is the preposition, me is an object. And this may be like a very basic grammar thing for a lot of conlangers, but for me, it's like, whoa, a preposition? What is that? Mind blown. But, or if you're saying like to that person, you have to as your preposition. You have that, which is a determiner, which I took a bunch of notes on these, but I think there's a lot of different types of determiners. That I think is like a demonstrative. And so you could have a determiner that gives you like any, many, each, some of, the specific one. You could have indefinite or definite articles. So you could like a person or the person. You could have possessive, so like my or your. We could have demonstratives or demonstratives like this and those, or that which I point to would be one I'd probably want to create. And then quantities, each, every, some, or no could be a determiner too. So have a set of formal and informal pronouns, which are also part of verb conjugation. These are used in second and third person, though, in those languages. Interesting. That's fun. I always need reminders with grammar. Yeah. I'm so bad with grammar. Like, the fact that I'm doing this at all is just mind-blowing because I'm so bad at it. Not understanding the concepts, but understanding the labels of everything and, like, thinking about it in the way that is useful for conlanging. But hello, Artifexian. I did not expect to see you here. Hello. Or yo, you know. But yeah, so I'm atrocious at this. So, and then at the end we would have person, right? Which is the object of the statement, right? And I think, and this is like, I'm not sure yet, but I think what I want to do is separate out proper nouns from being in the, what would you call the whole, like, you, action, add positional markers, that whole section of speech, that whole, I mean, I guess it's the verb. I mean, it's not, I guess it's a word, right? It's a word, sort of, but I think I want proper nouns to be outside of the word entirely. So I think if it is a person, as in, like, to that person as a general, like, common noun, or if it's like a pronoun, I mean, yeah, a pronoun might make sense there, then it would get encoded. And if it's a proper noun, it would have to be pushed outside of the word complex, maybe. I'm sure there's a proper conlangy term for that, or a, you know, linguistic term for that. And if someone knows it, fill me in. But then that would get pushed probably afterwards. I think everything that would go on the end of the action, so other than the subject, would get pushed afterwards. And then I think if we're getting into, like, third valency, which is where we would have more objects or more elements being encoded by the verb, maybe I use that term correctly, I think I would also push that out to a separate word and not include it in the same context. Algonquian pronunciation? Unsure. Languages have a part of the verb they call the preverb, which is usually everything before the verb. You could steal that here and call it the postverb. I like it. We're stealing it. That is now what we're using. Yes. So it would be kicked out of the postverb. Can't stay for long. Supposed to be editing. How are you getting the comments on screen? That looks slick. How are you getting the comments on screen? I don't know. I'm in, what is this called? StreamYard? I'm using StreamYard, so I see all the comments from YouTube. It's a delay, though. And then I can see the screen here, and then I have what I'm drawing on a separate computer down here, which, like, is, like, sort of there. Don't know if you can see that at all. But it's been working out pretty well for being able to see everything. I think you use, what, OSB, and then you go straight into YouTube Live, I think was what you use. I'm unsure. But yes, let me write that down. So we have the post verb. Wow, I can write, and the preverb. I like that. What was I talking about? Oh, yes. Okay, and then getting into the more complicated bits. We have, like, that pot, say, or whatever object it is, right? That tree, that, I don't know, desk. And then you can have, like, different verbal aspects on it too, which is, like, if you want it to start stirring the pot, right? Say you're saying stir that pot. You could say stir that pot, like start stirring it. You could say do it once, like stir it once. You could say do it continuously, like keep doing it, assumably until the magical command wears off, or, like, until you tell them to stop, I guess. That would probably need to be a command, like, stop doing what I told you to do. And then it gets more complicated pulling into what I guess probably here might not, I don't know if these are still adverbial phrases, but if you want to have a spell that's like burn that tree once, or burn that tree until it bubbles, or burn that tree very quickly, where you're adding on like separate modifiers that aren't necessary for, like, it making sense, right? Because you could say I command you to burn that tree, and that makes sense. But if you specify that I want you to burn that tree until the leaves are gone, or until it falls down, or, like, you know, burn it very quickly, right? You're kind of modifying the command a little bit. So those get a little bit more complicated, but I think those are adverbial phrases. Maybe, I think. Yes. Okay, so Oh, and then I had over there, if we have like a third valency, so like I want you to, I command you to bring that book. Wait, yeah, I command you to bring that book to me, right? Then it's I'm commanding you to bring that book to me. So I think that's a valency of 3, which is you are the subject, that book is the first object, and then to me is another object. I think that's how it works. I'm probably using the wrong terms, but I think having that third valency bit, I would push to a separate word. So you'd have whatever your like valency marker is as a prefix, maybe some sort of adverbial marker, right? That would get pushed out if it has another object, and then you would have that other object there, and then it might continue being nested on like that with different like additional valency chunks. Like I want you to give that to me and the dog and the car and the like those might be multiple words potentially. I'm not entirely positive. So is the action intended to combine an active verb and an effect? So using your earlier example, bring cold, would the action just be to bring, or would the action be to bring cold specifically? So I think in that it would depend on how I built the verbs. Because like to bring cold could be a unique verb, or it could just be to bring and then the cold would have to be an object that's being brought. I'm not entirely positive how detailed I want to get with the verbs. I like the idea of doing a lot of complex derivation and like verbalization and nominalization. I think those are words I googled that sounded fun. But I think it would depend. In the case that this is a right like magical wind type entities, like saying bringing cold, or even like going specific as bringing cold wind would make sense to have been coded and combined into a single verb. Like I think that would make sense for that all to be within the action, but I think we'll just have to play with it and it might be different for different things. So you, nominative subject, bring book, accusative direct object, me, dative indirect object. This is the valency of 3. Okay. So I'm sort of right. I'm missing a lot of the like specific terms. I sort of understand what a direct versus indirect object is. The cases we'll get to. We'll get to all of that. We'll understand them one day. Will aspiration placement matter when casting? It could be needed for group ritual to synchronize aspiration positions while casting. So is that just like where you would breathe while talking? I have no idea. I've not thought that far yet. It might matter. It might matter if they end up being long enough, but like when I imagine these spells, right? Because these aren't spells used by people that are fluent, right? They're people that have sort of translated a couple of lines out of a book. They're going to be more general, right? They're not going to be like, oh, I want you to bring that brown book over to my desk and open it to page 67, right? Like that is way too specific for them to have an exact spell for written in a grimoire, right? So I don't imagine they're going to be that crazy long and specific anyway, probably. So it might not be necessary right now. The modifiers could get interesting, bring it to me now versus bring me the book could create loopholes that make amusing or potentially dangerous results. Yes, I want there to be a lot of potential when trying to translate this and using the spells to have like weird things happen. So if I understand the like grammatical confusey bits enough that someone translating it would probably be like, oh yeah, I think it does this, let's try it out, and then they like do something crazy, that would be a hoot. I reckon you could do bring cold as the verb of cold plus make, or colden, and then have an adposition that indicates movement towards. So towards me, make cold. Yes, I think that would make sense. Doing something like that for sure. And then enchilify. Yes, that should absolutely be the English translation of that. So I'm going to open up a new little layer on my board here, we're going to switch to a slightly more readable font. I know there's probably smarter ways to do this. I apologize, anyone who knows anything about Photoshop, because I use this like a 6-year-old. Wow. I just want 6. I briefly had 6. There we go. I have 6. So what I want to do is sort of start branching out, almost like we're mind mapping, but it's grammar, right? So I'm going to zoom in a bit. Hopefully I'm not too wobbly, although, hold on. I'll just do that briefly so that I can sort of tell if I'm moving it too much. But yeah, so the first thing that we have, conlangs are like ogres and those are like onions, layers. Yes. Okay, so let's start with just like mapping this out. Get a better angle here. So we have the spirit, and we mentioned before this is going to be in the vocative case. So, well, I'm just going to say this is a proper noun, and it's in the vocative case. I've seen people do some really cool shorthand for like these grammatical terms, and one day it'd be cool to learn that. I was watching what was it? The Conlang showcase for Elophi. One of Biblaridian's videos that was recommended in the channel because it's also a polysynthetic language, and the whole first part he's just like talking in that language, and then it shows all the little like, I don't know, like linguistic notation, whatever that's called, below it, and then like the actual English translation, and it literally blew my mind. I watched it like 6 times. But yes, so we have a proper noun in the vocative case, which means we need to consider other cases. I have a list that I wrote down of types of cases. I'm not sure yet what those will need to be, but I want to kind of connect it to where they would be used. So here in this part of the spell, we will only ever have a proper noun in the vocative case. That's it, right? That's all we need to worry about for this part of the spell. So then afterwards, we have I, which is, I think, either I or I and we would be the only variations we would use for this part of it. So this is essentially a subject marker, and it's sort of like a pronoun, right? And this would be I or we, potentially, depending on if I do that. And then we have whatever the mood is for the imperative clause, which I'm just going to write command here. And technically, I think there would also be a similar way of doing it if we did other moods. So like there's an interrogative mood, which is for like asking questions. There's a subjunctive mood, which is for like conditional situations, I think, or like hypothetical conditional situations. And then like a conditional mood. I think those would all be written like this, but I don't think we have a reason for doing that. So we are only going to worry about the imperative mood identifier, which is like, it's almost like a verb sort of, but we have the imperative mood. I guess it's less like an indicator maybe. So we have to come up with that. And then we will have different degrees, which again, there's only going to be like 4 options to this maybe. So it would just be like, these would all be, there's 4 options for what would go here, and that's it. So we'd have like welcome, beseech, command, and like a strong command. And let's see. Does the magic language also have a dual version? So like for the dual version for, could you be more specific? A dual version for what? Sanskrit, wow, had a more polite form of the imperative that functioned really similarly to subjunctives called the optative, which was used for expressing wishes or desires. Yeah, I guess it's sort of like that, like where they're all moods, but they have different levels of like force upon them, right? So we could potentially call them all like 4 different moods, right? That's kind of an option for this to be 4 moods. Or I guess it would maybe be 2 moods with different levels. Like, I welcome you and I beseech you, like, you're allowed to do this, and I wish you would do this, and I'm forcing you to do this, and like I am giving it my all to force you to do this, right? So maybe it's like 2 or 3 different moods potentially. And then priority levels, yeah, like goddesses. 2 goddesses, I suppose. That's why dual. No, because the spells, this language isn't actually used to talk to the goddesses. It's just what the goddesses also use to talk to the magical spirits. So like, it's the language they use, but it is the language of that other like dimension, of that other realm, right? For commanding these magical entities. So there wouldn't be any like dual, like 2 versions of it. So dual we versus many we. Potentially. I mean, I may also like, it might not make sense to even have like plurality pronouns depending on what we'll get into later, because I know that there will be. Yeah, I'm not sure yet. Like, I might not even need to go that far, because if there's only 2 options, right? Like, I do this, or even in the spell case, it might not matter to say we are commanding you, like saying that I command you and a lot of people are doing it at the same time could be enough, and then I don't even need to worry about that distinction. I don't know yet. It's possible. Figuring out the exact like pronoun system will be a step that we will get to. Imagining counterspelling being speaking in reverse. Oh my gosh, I'm not even, that is too far. That is too far for my poor little brain to conceptualize at the moment, doing all this backwards. Yes, but so we have this initial bit, right, which is our like imperative clause, or our mood clause, I guess we could call it. Mood clause. And we need to figure out the like pronoun system. So that's going to be something we need to figure out. The vocative case is going to be something we need to figure out. But this part I think is all simple. Like, again, there's going to be like 4 options for what this actually is going to be. And then I'll just have to come up with some names of spirits, and they'll have like a common suffix maybe to indicate the vocative case, or however I want to indicate the vocative case. Let's see. Let's scoot over. So then, let's see. We have you, which is the same thing as before, so I'm not even going to like write that out. And I think this would mostly get like dropped anyway. So dropped subject, because it's already used, right, by the like labeling at the beginning where we use the proper vocative noun. And then, okay. So for the action, I've been taking some notes on this, and I think there's like a lot of options for how we build up the specific verb stem. So we could have like noun, and then like some sort of verbalizer to basically go from noun to verb. And I was Googling this, like some ways to do this that get kind of interesting, where we could literally have like a little table, but was I taking notes on this? Yeah, so we could potentially have ones that are like a general verbifier. We could have like a causative verbifier, which would be like if our noun is fire, if it's a causative verbifier, it would be like to burn. Whereas if it's like maybe to use fire, it's to warm up, right? Like there could be like slight variations there based off different types of like derivation we use as the root and not a noun. Oh, that's smart. That's smart. Just to avoid confusion. That's smart. So, right, because this is it's almost sort of like compounding to an extent, right? Like, I mean, would this be compounding or would it be verbalization or like a form of derivation? Derivation? I think that's the word I'm looking for, potentially. But that's an option. We could just combine multiple roots or verbs. So like if we have I don't know what's going on out there. The kids are not napping very well right now. But if we can combine two different verbs, that could give us a new verb. My brain struggles to think of an example, but like, I don't know, maybe like to stir and to rotate is like to rotisserie. I don't know. That's the first thing that popped into my head. But like we could do something like that where we combine them, or we could just have a lot of like verb to verb derivation where we have a lot of like verb roots that we then use in a lot of different ways potentially. If you had a root meaning fire and then added a suffix that makes it a verb, the meaning could radically shift to burn or to create fire, etc. This is derivation since it's changing meaning. Okay, yes, that makes sense. Brilliant. So that is another thing we need to figure out is going to be the creation of verb stems. So now we get to the fun bit. I think the way I want this to work for doing all of the post verb, right? So we have, this is going to be our verb stem, preverb, and our post verb. I've been kind of thinking about the ordering in my head, and I think maybe the order of markers that I want to go with is, I think, let me like write this over here just so that I remember in my brain that this is not set in stone. Determiner, which would include like any, many, the, maybe. We could have like an indefinite or definite version, so like a/the. Is my notes wrong? Are both of those thus? I don't know. Possessive. Oh no, it's being slow. Hold on. I don't know why this is being slow all of a sudden, but I'm going to save it just in case. So possessive, so like my. Oh no. It's being slow. Why is it being slow? Come on, where's the rest of my Y? Well, who doesn't love a technical difficulty? Whatever. I'll just read this part because I don't need it written down. But we'd have the determiner, which I think it would make sense to have as many of these options as possible just to expand the different types of spell options. But like the possessives, the demonstratives, the quantifiers, so like every, each, or no, like saying no fire, right? Basically as an order not to do something, which in most cases I don't think would really super be relevant, but I think that can maybe come into play. So we need to build out a whole system of determiners and which ones we want to have, and then like we'll figure out what those markers are, those like affixes are. And then after determiners, I think we would have the patient, because I think it makes sense for those to be right next to each other because it's the determiner is really being applied to the patient, right? And if we were to separate out the patient, I think the determiner would go with it. I think it would go with it, right? Because if you were saying like, I don't know, it's just going to be weird. Sorry. It's the example that gets stuck in my head. But like, instead of saying like, I want you to burn the book, if you said, I want you to burn Sally, right? We're not getting dark here at all. If it was Sally, which is a proper noun, if we want to push that out behind the like the word, the cluster, the complex might make sense, then I think the determiner would go with it. Otherwise, you might say like my Sally, and it like I want you to burn my quickly start now Sally. Like I think that would make less sense. So I think the determiner would go with the patient, maybe. Tech and magic really don't work that well. Yeah, maybe that's the problem we're having here. Because it's just like my whole computer is completely frozen right now. Which, let me see if I can even minimize it. Nope, it's completely frozen. That's fun. Okay. So anyway, yeah, so determiners, and we probably want to pick an order, so I might separate those into groups, but like I imagine having like all the different types of things lined up in a row, having the little like table options for what they could be, and then you just pick and choose the ones you want, and you won't have something for every category. And that would satisfy most cases until we start getting into compound stuff, but like maybe that's like a later step, right? So the other things that I think we might want to have, oh wait. So most English determiners only apply on nouns, and articles like the and a are examples of this, whereas here the main focus is on the verbs. Right. Right, that makes sense. So, which is, yeah. So I think it makes sense that it is on the what's it called? The object, right? The noun object. So if you have the determiner is applied on that, both of those could get chucked into the complex. So instead of saying burn Sally, you can make a verb of to burn a girl and then use it demonstrative. So burn a girl over the. Oh my gosh. Okay, let me think. So you can have to burn a girl and then use a demonstrative. So basically it would be sort of merging the determiner and the patient into the verb itself, right? Like, because it's kind of a little like what exactly is happening here, right? But if it just chucks on, like that would then be considered part of the verb stem, maybe, if we add the like what is that? Like the a girl would be, that be the determiner, or would that be a preposition? What's a preposition? Do I know what a preposition is? I don't know. That's a thing we'll have to have. I think that's like to this or this, maybe, are those prepositions. Why are we burning Sally's again? I don't know why, but like catching things on fire is just like the big example that keeps popping into my head is like simple grammatically. Because like the other ones are like, bring cold wind over here or move this from here to there, which is like, is a more complex verb, whereas like burning something is less complex in my head. Feel free to offer a less dark alternative. Maybe try parsing phrases together using phrase structure grammar. Coming from a programming background, it would be fairly easy for you to grasp phrase structure grammar. You say that, and yet we might all be shocked by how bad it is. Okay, so try parsing phrases together. Try parsing phrases together. So like using phrase structure grammar. I'm not quite sure how that would work in this case. Nouns, and especially objects being incorporated in the verb will constitute expanding the verb stem. Yes. Okay. Yes. So if we kept it like this, then we would basically have a potential determiner and object cluster being pulled into the verb stem itself. So that would be like, I guess that would just be like, then maybe I'll have like subparts inside the verb stem to think about this right now to build it. You could nest phrases inside of each other. Burn, girl, yonder, proper name. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I could do something like that. Yeah, I'll have to think about that once we get into more like complex stuff. Because I like the idea of just being able to have like a thing, right, where like we have all the different parts, and then I can have like, okay, under the, patient section, like whatever types of things we end up having for the noun, if we end up having like pluralizers or whatever determiners we have, like would go with that. And so I'd have like the little charts there, and then the things that would just be in the, I guess, post verb them and not inside the verb stem. So the post verb would be probably potentially prepositions, tense, aspect, any other like modifying adverbial phrases would all be afterwards. Is this gonna work now? Okay, I'm gonna try closing Photoshop real quick. Let me do this, close window, and see if this works. How does magic in the supposed situation even function? Is the grantor of the magic an entity, a deity, etc., or their personal manipulation of nature laws? So the way this magic system, spell system works is you are basically forcing a magical spirit to do something for you. So this language is basically how you get spirits to do what you want. So it's, this spirit, evoking them by their name, I command you, and then whatever you want them to do. I command you to bring the book over here, right? Humans, or, whatever they are, right? Like our sentient species that we're writing the book from, they're going to be humans, have no innate magic themselves, other than their ability to speak this magical language, right? That makes other creatures do things for them, essentially, to varying degrees, right? It could be I welcome you to do this, I beseech you to do this, and then varying degrees of force. Let's see if this is gonna open or not. That is not closing. Postpositions are totally a thing. Adposition is the umbrella term for both. Okay. Yes, so varying degrees or varying numbers of adpositions for all the types of things, most being postpositions. I think the only thing that would go in the front in the preverb, or I guess the preverb would, so okay. The preverb is made up of prepositions. Wait. Prepositions? Is that word? Is that the word I'm thinking of? Am I thinking of prepositions? Is that what I'm... Are those the same thing, or am I crazy? And then we have postpositions would make up the parts of the post verb. I think that's correct. Yes, okay. I'm glad. Wow, that's... The things just come together. Can you call for your own name, compelling your soul out of body to perform magic? So that wouldn't work because you are not like able to do magic, right? This language only bounds those that are in the magical dimension or the magical realm, like the beings of that realm. So like sort of like this language is the only thing that can breach that, like saying these words goes across the barrier and commands them to do things, but like you have no ability to do things. So like I don't think that would really be relevant. Hello, welcome. Yes, prepositions. Wow, it's almost like I know what that is now, except I probably don't. And postpositions, yeah. So isn't there another version that's like, there's another version that means either in the middle or either, or like I thought there's another one of those, isn't there? Preverb is made of prefixes. There's no adpositions located in there right now anyway. Okay, yeah, okay, so right now we just have prefixes to indicate subject, but those aren't adpositions because they don't because they don't like add or change meaning onto the verb. They satisfy the valency requirements of the verb. Okay, yes. So far, all your adpositions are in the postverb. They're technically postpositions here. Okay, okay. That keeps things clear for me, probably. And fixes, probably. I feel like there's another alternative to prepositions and postpositions, but I could be wrong. Yes. Okay. Okay. So, fun fact, my Photoshop is still not closing, which is super helpful. So what I will probably do, since this whole thing is just frozen, is I will probably just talk through some of the questions I have here and take notes in my notebook, and I can like show it to you, and we'll probably won't go for as long as I thought we were, and I'll figure out an alternative to this whole mess that doesn't work for next time. Yes. Okay. So one of the things I have been struggling with a lot for this is just understanding the different components of like how to categorize these in my brain in a way that I can then make them into little chunks and research them later. So like the idea of like the determiner and the patient, or the determiner and the object, makes a lot of sense for me. Like I understand what the object is of the like verb phrase or whatever, and we can chuck that in the verb stem, and that's fine. Which actually, let me make a note of that. Those go in the verb stem. So then, let's see. When it comes to, what's the word? Verbal, wait, I have a note for this. Not verbal aspects, because that's one of the types. Verbal, what's the category for that? This is where my brain, it just like dies. Verb morphology, I think maybe that's what I'm looking for. Maybe. I don't know, whatever that word is, but like I know there's tense, mood, and aspect are the big three, right? Circumpositions, that's what I was thinking of. I have no idea what those are, but I remember seeing that word somewhere, and it looked daunting. But yeah, so we have tense, mood, and aspect. And we've already established that mood is going to be provided by having that earlier like clause that's separate. Tense would essentially just be like past, present, future. Those could be part of the like a postposition, but also I don't think they would be relevant in here at all. Like I don't think there would be any like you can't command a spirit to do something in the future, because like you're forcing them to do something now, right? I think that would be a limit of the magic system. So like the language would probably have that concept, but we would never have it here. So I don't think we need to have any tenses worked out. So then that leaves verbal aspects. And my understanding of verbal aspects, I think I have notes somewhere for this. Do I have notes somewhere for this? Maybe I don't. So those are like, I know start is one of them. So like saying to start doing something. Let me Google that real quick. Verbal aspect. Verbal aspect. Yeah. So it's expressing how a verbal action, event, or state extends over time. And it looks like there's a lot of versions for it. And so I think, okay, yeah. So this is like doing it habitually, doing it continuously, doing it progressively, or just like doing it, I guess, one time thing. So I think we need a chart for the types of aspects that we want to have here. Aspects are usually divided into categories of perfective and imperfective, whether the action is continuous or not. Yeah. So we'll need to make like a chart like that. There are a lot of aspects. Yeah. I imagine we will need a limited set of aspects for this. Oh wait, we've been told what circumpositions are. That's when there's an adposition both before and after that indicates one meeting. Oh, so it's like, I don't want to do that. Nope, no circumpositions. Vetoed. Absolutely not. This is so new to me. Me too. Okay, yeah, so for aspects, I think a lot of them wouldn't necessarily be relevant, so we can probably just do the ones that would be. So to start doing something or stop doing something, I think could be verbal aspects. So like start, stop. Um, doing something continuously. Right, so like do this. If you were saying like stir this pot, like I guess conditional, are there conditional aspects, or is that's a separate thing? That's a separate is it like a modifier then? So confusing thing about aspects is many languages have unique names for aspects that are similar to aspects in other languages that have a different name. That's so helpful. Oh my gosh. Yeah, Googling things is hard when all this stuff is different. I usually boil mine down to 3 and work from there. Yeah, I think we can probably be like have a smaller list. Limited because humans have not recovered, or limited because fear, or limited because not relevant to how magic realm exists. Mostly limited to the context of the spells themselves, like the capabilities of the control of the magic, right? Because like you can't. I think I mentioned this earlier, but like you can't. What was the example I used? Like you can't tell a spirit to like do something every Tuesday, right? Like you can kind of just force them to do something now, like. So anything that like extends a long period of time or like anything like that probably wouldn't work at all. Um, Conditionals are moods. The action is dependent on another state or action being fulfilled. Oh, that's right. That's right. Okay. Okay. So if we had a spell that was like, I command you to stir this pot until it boils, then we would need to add a conditional mood. How would we do that? Okay. So if mood is done by previous clauses, then we'd have another clause before that implies the conditional onto it. So it would be, with the way we have this set up, it would probably be you have your like imperative clause, the like I command, and then you'd have a conditional when the pot boils. Yeah, probably. And then the actual thing that you're telling them to do, right? Like that would probably be an earlier chunk. Okay, that's interesting. I for some reason in my head I was like, oh, I probably won't have to do the other moods. No, we're probably going to need to understand how conditionals would work. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. Yeah, so we need conditional moods as well. Circumpositions are rare. Good, as they should be. They sound confusing. Until it boils could be a way of defining the tense of the verb, actually. Oh, that's an option. A conditional till it boils. A conditional is like he would be hungry if he hadn't already eaten, where he would be hungry is conditional. Okay, so I think that makes sense. So you're not telling them how long to do something, you're telling them no, that you are doing that. You're telling them how long to do something or like when to stop versus okay, yeah. That makes sense. So ring the bell if he opens the door as a conditional. Okay. So we might still need that. I'll have to see if I can think of any use cases for that because again, that's like an open-ended thing, which I think would be less likely unless it's like a short-term kind of thing or like it could even be used potentially for the more gentle summon imperative moods. Like if you're saying I welcome you to ring the bell if someone comes to the door, right? Like that might make sense. So we might need a conditional mood for that, but then it could be a verb tense until it boils. A verb tense. So that would be going in the verb stem as well. Is there another way to do that that would be more of a post position? Because I feel like this feels like it should be a post position to me. So is right on another thing happening that's not actually strictly true at the time of the utterance. Potentially. I don't understand enough to but yeah, I think saying like, or even if we're talking about, because I think the category of thing I want here, right, is like I guess start stop, but it feels like it could be related to the aspect to say like do this 3 times or do this until it boils, like giving it an end condition more so than a conditional where it will definitely happen and it will definitely stop at this point. So like after 3 iterations or for this amount of time. Like I feel like that's kind of what I want here. Blah, blah, blah. Mood generally describes the nature of the sentence as opposed to timing of an action, like indicative, interrogative, imperative being the big 3. Indicative. So I have interrogative in my notes. I don't have indicative or imperative. Wait, no, I do have imperative. That's the command. So I don't have indicative in my notes. So I guess that would be like an as indicated by sort of vibe. Yes, I don't think that's what I want for this specific case, but I think I will want to figure out how that would work for conditional as well. You could always make any marking in postposition. True. We have the power here. You could make a lot of the more fundamental verb moods a part of the main verb as a part of the post verb instead of putting it in the auxiliary verb before it. Yeah, I think I like the idea of doing that. As part of, yeah, I think I want it to be in the post verb because I imagine this could be the part where it gets a little bit chainy, and I kind of like the idea of having those little bits like right there in the post verb. Many languages have modal adposition / particles. Yeah. So I know the imperative mood is going to be like a separate previous clause. Like that's one of those things that I have 100%. I definitely want that. I like the feel of doing that. Might seem more like an aspect. Some languages have a telic aspect, which indicates an endpoint, versus athletic, which has no endpoint. So maybe that's what I sort of want. Or I guess I could honestly, it doesn't even matter what we call it necessarily, right? But the concept would be this would be something that I would use potentially in place of other aspects, like start doing something, or that could still be part of it, or like it sort of fits into that category of like start doing something or do something continuously or whatever to then have that telic aspect perhaps, which has an endpoint. So then the question would just be, so where are my notes on aspects? Let me start a new page of notes. So telic aspect, which indicates endpoint. So then that would be like until this happens, which would have to have other parts of speech in it, right? Because if it's like until it boils, then we're talking, okay, until it boils. So you'd probably have whatever the actual aspect indicator is, right? So you'd have like, or like an until, or would be implied until, and then you'd have to have whatever that condition is after it. So condition would be the second part. So until condition, which could be until it boils. Until it boils. What part of speech is, or what is that? Okay, hold on. This is where like my grammar sucks. I guess that would be the same as saying until it's boiled. Or so we might need to have a tense there until a state. This is a state. Oh God, is that in boils? What type of word is that? Is that wow? We're going from a verb and then changing the form of it through derivation to make it I feel like that's not a noun, right? I feel like that's still a verb. It's just like a different verb form, maybe. Indicative is just the sentence. Like when there's no mood attached. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Okay. There are even scales of telicity that can indicate progress towards an endpoint. Okay. Yeah, okay, that makes sense. I understand that now. Boils is a gerund in English. Okay, that is a word I'm unfamiliar with and explains why I couldn't figure out what it is. It's an impersonal verb. Impersonal verb because we're taking away a valency. Maybe it's less valent. I don't know. Okay, so a gerund. So it's like if you said it's raining. Okay, that makes sense. I feel like did I have? I feel like I had more notes, and I don't know where any of them went. I lied. It's not impersonal. It's stative in this context. English is just weird. I hate English. Fair. I'm going to pretend that that's also the reason why I know little about English grammar. It's because I hate it. Yep. We're going to go with that. But it is a gerund, which I think that's one of the derivations that takes away one of the valency things. Oh yes, the whole active versus state of rabbit hole. No, I don't want a rabbit hole. I just want it to be a thing. Okay. So the condition would be what in English is a gerund, which I think is just a form of a verb. So verb form that has been derivated to be stative. A stative verb. So stative verb, which I think makes sense. So like until it boils, until it rains, or until it's raining, right? Boiling is gerund. Yeah. How do you pronounce it? Is it gerund or gerund or gerund or gerund is a verb form used as a noun. Okay, so it's a nounalizer. I feel like it doesn't go that way. I know there's verbalizers, but I lose a soft G. See, that's a lot of phonology terminology. A soft G. Good. I don't know which one is soft. I feel like gerund is that softer? Gerund. Okay. Yes. Okay. Great. Fantastic. Nominal. Brilliant. A brilliant. Okay, nominalizer. Okay. Gerund is a special verb form made using the participles, verbal nouns. Thinking of ing and ed verbs, but that doesn't take a subject. Okay, so if it doesn't take a subject, it is reducing the valency. Okay, brilliant. Yes. Okay, so that is what we want. Would we want anything else there? Because if we're talking about different types of telic aspects, saying until something happens would make sense. Would probably the number of iterations would probably be a type of aspect, like an iterative aspect, maybe. So iterative aspect, which would essentially be whatever the iterative marker is. So iterative marker, and then we would have like the number of iterations, probably, which might need to be like, it might need to have an object to it potentially, like 3 rounds or, you know, potentially, which could be number plus noun. Potentially, which would then be a determiner plus an object, maybe? Let's just use 2 verbs together and put the boil in the telic aspect. This until boil end. Fair. So until boil end. Yeah, that would probably be easiest. Until boil ends. Yeah, so however I would want to do that. Well, would it be... okay, yeah. Potentially. So 2 verbs together. Okay, so I could do it like that too. This shirt is a lot to cram into one word. Yes, it is, and that's the entire point. Yes, we're cramming all the things into one word. Although not everything, because if we are adding a noun, so if we're adding like until we've done 3 stirs, right? And stirs being a noun. That's a noun. I think that's a noun. So like until we've done 3 stirs. If we're adding that third object, then by the mumbo jumbo rules that I stated earlier, that would force it out into a second word, because I only want 2 objects in a word for a completely arbitrary reason. I don't know why, but I said that. So we're going with the vibes today. No mistakes, just happy accents. We're going with it. I said it. So that would actually get booted out. Unless it was just like a relatively simple. Oh wait. Then it would actually really matter if we're considering the telic aspects to be built from verbs, or if it would be a... Well, if it's a state of verb, it's still a verb. Either if it's that or if it's just made of verbs with like the telic aspect onto it. Either way, it's a verb. So it doesn't have to get the boot out of the word complex or the word unless it would require a noun. Really, in English, when we say until it boils, we mean until the boiling process has finished. That's true. So just saying like until it's done. So there could just be an aspect that's like until completed. So like, or then at that point you probably wouldn't need it. It would probably be implied. So in this case, a better example would be like until it turns green. Like stir the pot until it turns green. That seems like a witchy thing to do, right? So then you would have a noun. It would be until it turns green. Or no, until it is green. Which it would, the act of being would be potentially a state of verb. So until it becomes or has become or is, right? Like until it is in the state of, and then green, which I guess would be an adjective in this case. No. Yes. Adjective. Until it becomes this adjective. Yeah. Okay. That's going to be a whole separate thing. I'm going to put a big star on this and put some of our examples down, and that'll have to be a whole chart we're going to have to figure out. So until it turns green with lots of question marks. Hey, you're wearing the t-shirt? Yes, I am. I am very serious. When I bought it, slight side tangent, actually very side tangent. I got to hold my new cousin's baby, her new little baby this morning. And so I went to Target yesterday to get like some little toys and like shirts and wipes and stuff for them. And that's where I found this shirt. And when I put it on to show my husband when I got home, like, look what I bought. He was like, oh my gosh, I dare you to wear that for a video. And I was like, I was already planning on wearing it for a video. Come on. Like, that's half the whole point. Like, get on my level. Come on. To be honest, I mostly just ignore the differences between participles, gerunds, and infinitives because the distinctions often become arbitrary and not Indo-European languages. Yeah, I imagine we won't really need those indicators too much. Once we figure out everything that's going in these like postpositions, they'll just be like they'll have little categories of however we want to group them, and then that'll be all we really need to care about. I'm here for it. Magic should be complicated. Exactly. And when literally the entire point of the use of this language in the book is going to be for them struggling to translate like the coded version of it and try to figure out how to do this big thing, right? So like it being complicated is like very much the point. We are going for sentence long verbs. If so, please do continue. Yes, we are. They're not going to be like that crazy because there are going to be a few things that are going to be separate. So like if there is a topic indicator subject, that goes first. So in this case, that is going to be our vocative noun of the name of the spirit we're evoking. And then there will be the command, which is, it's not working because I can't use my laptop now. What is that called? The imperative. Mood is a separate like clause. And then we have like the rest of it for the most part will be one single word or verb, right? One single verb, unless there's a third. So unless there's 3 or greater valency. I think that's how you would word that, right? Until there's like a third noun, then we're going to bump that out into a separate word. Otherwise, it's all going to be in the same sentence. Yes. Colors can be verbs. Yes, that's what I want. Colors are verbs. That's what we need. To become green is a verb. Yep. And that ties us back into what we were talking about for verb forming earlier, where green will essentially be like to become this thing. Like we'll have a way to form verbs like that, or a way to verbify adjectives. Yep, that's what those things are. Okay, might be useful to think outside of English for a minute here. Okay, you can rephrase all adjectives as verbs meaning to be, so you can have a verb meaning to be. Yes, okay, we're all on the same page here. We are all on the same pages here. Word classes aren't universal. Yes, good, I like it. Okay, okay, so I think that is good. To be greening. Yes, exactly. Brilliant, that's what we want. So, okay, that is aspect. Well, that is some aspects. We're going to have to probably do other ones. But like, okay, so we definitely want aspect. I don't think we need tenses, right? So then what we have left for what I've written down are modifiers and adverbial phrases. And I don't actually know if they're different. I wrote them in 2 different places, which meant when I was Googling it, I saw the different things in 2 different places called 2 different things, but they might not actually be 2 different things. But there's also, okay, we also need to figure out the relation one. So like in relation to. So I think this would be a demonstrative maybe, right? So if I want to say like, I want you to create fire, right? Everything's fire. I want you to create fire around that tree. So we already have the ability or like the concept of that tree, right? Because that's the determiner. The tree is the object. So those get chucked into the verb stem. So make fire that tree instead of like burn that tree. I mean, it could be burn that tree. But we want to say like around, which would be, I don't think that's a determiner. I have a note saying relation. I don't know what type of speech that would be, saying like around, behind, underneath, above, that sort of thing. So let's see if I can Google this. So around, behind, this is going to be like prepositions, isn't it? Behind, around, what part of speech am I thinking of here? Wow, I just have a lot of pictures of arms. Oh. Because I can't spell. That's why. Okay. Okay, yeah, it's a preposition. Shows that, okay, a preposition shows a relationship between a noun, pronoun, and another word. So, a preposition Okay, actually, okay, hold on. Okay, wait. Okay, hold on. I'm braining here for a minute. So if I wanted to have a spell that said, I want you to create fire around that tree, right? Saying that tree isn't actually the object of create fire, right? You're just saying, I want you to create fire, which is single valency, because it's just, I want you to create fire, right? So the object of that is not that tree. What we're doing by adding a preposition, someone tell me if I'm being really dumb here, but I think that means that we're increasing valency by adding a preposition, by saying, like, do this thing, but I want you to do it in relation to this other thing, right? So in the case where the verb does not already have an object in the stem, which would this just get bumped into the stem as well? I guess potentially it would depend. I think. But okay. So if there's not already a noun in the stem as the object of the verb, then we could potentially put it in the stem. No, I don't think we would put that in the stem. I think that those would become like a postposition marker, right? So like you would have something for that would basically mean around the tree. Or if you already had a noun in the verb stem, wait, hold on. The amount of gravity. Yeah. Because in English, a lot of this isn't inflectional, might be the word there. Yeah. So it's a lot. And it's also a lot if you couldn't explain English grammar to anybody. That would be me. Although maybe this will help me in my writing, because when people are talking to me about grammar stuff, I can be like, oh yeah, I actually understand what you're talking about, instead of being like, I don't know, you're crazy, you're speaking gibberish to me. Okay, this is a divalent word. Okay. You create fire around that tree. It's just that tree is not a regular object. Okay. So this could be part of the way noun incorporation works. Burn tree and then a movement affix or movement around an affix. And then a movement affix for movement around an object to make it burn tree around. Okay. So yeah, okay. Create fire tree around. You just use the imperative, right? Yeah. So we wouldn't actually have that. And then a further clarification could be added with a demonstrative. Burn tree around there. Okay. So I guess in this case then we wouldn't call it a preposition. It would be a relational or movement affix in the verb stem. So let me think this out. What if otherwise it already had an object? So what if what we were saying was okay, what's an example? Okay, what about this? I command you to move that book under the desk. Then the book is the direct object of move, right? I want you to move that book under the desk. Then how would that work? Would that then just get chucked into the verb stem too in that case? Or because I did say, and it totally wasn't a mistake, that once you have more than two nouns, you need to give it the boot. Could be locative case around that tree. Oh, maybe a series of locative cases for the affix. Yeah, like a locative affix. I can speak. Hold on. Locative affix. Yeah. But then, yeah, so what if, though, I have multiple objects for the verb? But remember, two objects, and you have to give one of them the boot. So then at that point, would you shove under the desk out of the clause, or out of the word, out of the verb? Yes, this whole thing is one verb. Right. Okay. So then we give it the boot out of the verb. And it would be the same thing, though, right? It would be a locative affix with the noun then. I think that would still work, right? Where it's a similar case to if we were saying, oh, something just changed on my computer. It finally shut down Photoshop. That's so helpful. I don't know why that didn't work. That's just great. It's still showing up as that exact same page, though, in my StreamYard, as in I could add it back up to the screen as that frozen page, which is so helpful. So a full phrase like move book under desk locative. So then that would be the question, is if you have to give one of the objects the boot. I don't know why I say the boot, but it's fine. Would that be a locative case, or would it be a locative affix? Affix. I don't know. I've said that word so many times that it sounds wrong to me. So then would it be like move book and then space under being a type of locative? I guess at that point it would be a prefix on the noun. Yeah, I guess. So either or, where I could have a locative form of desk. I'm not sure what would make the most sense there. I'd say desk would be kicked out, but you mark desk as the object and leave book incorporated and mark under with verbal affix. So desk, yeah, so we're kicking out desk, but you mark the desk as the object and leave the book incorporated. Yeah, I would keep book incorporated for sure. It's only the ones that surpass 2 that get the boot, and mark it under with the verbal affix. So yeah, so it would be what Formica 1 said first, where it'd be like move the book under, and then later you would say locative, the desk somehow marked locative with either like an affix or a noun case, a noun case, I think. Case is indicated through an affix. It's not necessarily an either or. The locative case, because it's a case, only applies to nouns. So in this situation, it'd be placed on the unincorporated desk. Yes. I don't know why, but placed on the unincorporated desk is such a glorious stringing together of words. What you're sort of getting at is that direct object can be incorporated in the verbal and direct. Yes. That is a much more linguistical way to phrase the random words that I strung together. I'm writing that down. So direct objects, that's brilliant. That's brilliant. Yep. Direct objects incorporated. Indirect not. Okay, good. I like that. Or formally grammatical case. Okay. So we have move book, right? Because that's the verb stem. And then we add under, which is a locative marker. And then we would then give the indirect object desk, and then with a locative affix. Oh wait, did I click the wrong one? Hold on, I'm making sure I'm like following. Yeah. Yes. Okay. Yes. So I think that makes sense. So that's how we do that. So that gives us that case. So then it will depend on how you handle the adposition. So if under is attached to book, does it mean under the book? In strict phrase structure grammar, that's the meaning. So I think in this case, right, the locative marker would not be inside of the verb stem. Or maybe it would be. I think it would be outside of the verb stem. So like move the book would be the verb stem, right? And then under would be a marker. And the fact that it's after the direct object means it maybe doesn't apply to the direct object and it would apply to a later one, maybe, or maybe we just move the whole locative marker outside, but I don't know if I want to move it outside. I would say that you'd mark desk as an object because the locative meaning was indicated by the verbal affix. Right. Okay. You mark it as an object. So yeah, we could do that. Mark that as an object. But here it seems like you're allowing to attach the direct object and have case agreement on the indirect object. So for some reason in my brain, this tends to make sense as from an ordering perspective. So like right now you have in the verb stem, you have the actual like the verby bits, right? Your different verb morphemes or however you're making your verb. And then you would have the potential determiners. So like my or the or many. And then you would have the actual direct object. Once you hit that direct object, after that, you're not in the verb stem anymore, right? So it's generally applying to the verb, but not specifically the direct object. So if you were to have a locative case outside of that, it would always apply to an indirect object, right? Because it's outside of the verb stem. It's not directly applying to the object. It's just relating to the movement. So like you're moving it under the desk. It doesn't have anything to do with the book. You're moving it under an indirect object that needs to come afterwards. I don't know why, but that makes sense in my brain. That may just because my brain decides it likes that, even though it doesn't actually make any sense. But yeah, I don't like, because otherwise we could have the indicator be afterwards. I tend to utilize minimal redundancy, which is always naturalistic. Yeah. Okay, I see what you mean. I always feel like it makes more sense to put the direct and indirect objects with the verb, thus your two allowed nouns, and everything else is separate: location, stop, condition, etc. Yeah, so the other noun that is allowed isn't actually any indirect object, it's the subject. So you're allowed to have the subject and the direct object, but not any indirect objects, I think. So basically you can only have one object or noun before the verb, so like in the pre-verb, and one in the post-verb, and everything else is separate. I feel like it's already being marked by an object because the placement in the word order, though. Adding the locative case clarifies it anymore. Yeah, that's what I'm sort of vibing. I think that makes sense with what I was thinking, that like you can tell, but like you would know as a speaker what ordering of things makes it part of the verb stem and then what would make it afterwards, I think. If the direct object is incorporated, you can have the distinction between adpositions and other modifiers on the verb and those that come after. I think so. I think that's what we'd have here. Move book mine, desk under. Well, it would be move my book under. So move my book would be the verb stem, under, and then desk locative, I think. But in like a locative case. So like you can tell that it's like, maybe we're all not on the same page. Then you can only attach modifiers to the stem if it directly affects the object. The only things right now I have in the stem is determiners, and everything else would apply to like the verb and not the book. And if it applies to the book, then it would be in the stem, and then it would be before the book. versus outside, I think. I think we'll have to like play around more with like the different types of word structures for that. Right. Yeah. Okay, if the subject is one of the two nouns, then it definitely makes sense that the direct object is the other. Yeah. So you have the subject, the direct object, and then the direct object is kicked out. So then move, mine, book, under desk. It's either that or under could be in the first bit, and then desk would just have like a locative case, but I think that makes sense. I think you could do it either way, and it might depend on, like, there might be a couple of grammatically correct options there depending on everything that you're trying to say. But yes, so I think we have that, and then yeah, you have that locative marker over there where under is the locative case. Yes. Yeah. Where it is specifically, yeah. Yes. I think that is what we're doing here. As an affix. So it is 3:46. At this point, I really want to be like writing this up as like we really need to start writing up the different options for how these like verbs can be formed, the different structures, and then start figuring out like, okay, we need to figure out what all of our aspects are going to be. What are all the locative things going to be? Like, we need to start breaking all of that down. Yeah, that would be a thing too. It's an option. I feel like the specific detail that the book is going under something should be part of the verb's post verb, not really a case, just to be very. That is true. So if we did that, then we would want to mark the desk as, we want to mark the desk somehow though, like either I think as like an indirect object, or like give it something to apply that it's like related to the locative affix, because what if we had a bunch of these, right? So then, like if we were saying, what's that child's nursery rhyme that's like, over the hill and far away to grandmother's house we go, right? Like if we had a couple of those, although then that would all potentially be locatives, then it would just have to be order dependent, I think. But if you had multiple indirect objects that get the boot, then they could potentially maybe have markers to tell them what type of thing they're applying to, not the specific case. So if we have like, yeah, the under locative marker in the post verb, then yeah, we would just want to make sure we know that that other noun or that other object is part of it, potentially. Over the hill and through the woods to grandma's house we go. Yeah, exactly. The verb's valency is indicated by the suffix in the post verb, isn't it? So, okay, the verb's valency is indicated by a suffix in the post verb. So if the desk comes after the verb and you already know that the verb is trivalent, you know the desk is related to the verb. Yes, I think that would be clear. And I think ordering, like having them be order specific, if for some reason there were multiple things in the post verb that require an indirect object, right? Then I think that you would just have to make sure the order is the same. And the desk being in locative tells you the verb occurs at a location in regards to the desk. Yes. So yes. Okay. I think we were on the same page. Yes. And then under in the post verb makes it so the action moves the book under the desk. Yes, I think that is correct. I think that is what we're going for here. Let me make sure I have that starred with the correct words. Yeah. Yes, so that is what I want for that. And I think that like fits the vibes where we're trying to shove as much as we can in the verb itself while not letting there be too many like indirect nouns, which also is going to be a thing because I don't want any proper nouns in there either, which is something we'll have to figure out how to deal with later, because what if you have, well, I guess that might be obvious. So, because if you have a verb that's saying like, I want you to, do you have a locative? Where it's a where there's a proper noun as the direct object, but there's still an indirect object. I want you to bring Sally under the desk. That's kind of weird, but like, you know, I think that might make sense. So then you would have to put both Sally and the desk outside, but Sally wouldn't be in the locative case. Sally would just be the name, the noun, proper noun for Sally. And then you would have the desk have that locative case on it, so that it would be clear that even though this verb clearly requires a direct object, it's afterwards because it's a proper noun. So move book under desk locative instead of move book under desk. Yes. Hi Emma, popping in to boop the like button. I appreciate it. Hello. There are languages that sort of break down the basic locative case into more specific cases, which we could utilize here. Yes, I think we would want, like, it wouldn't just be like, well, maybe. We will have to look into that. I will write a note to look into different locative cases because it might not be necessary since we're actually having a like actual locative marker with the specific type of like under, around, behind, whatever, like that is already specified. So we might not need a more specific cases. But we should definitely look into that. Check out Finnish noun cases. Is Finnish the language that like has the really long words? Is that Finnish or am I thinking of something else? But okay, let me write that down. Finnish noun cases. Okay. If proper nouns aren't allowed to be incorporated, you could double mark it with the person argument. Oh, wait, okay. With the person argument on the object in the verb. So to slap someone plus John accusative is slap John. Oh, yeah, that might make the most sense because then that would follow our pattern of then marking the indirect objects, or it wouldn't be an indirect object, but we're marking the objects with how they relate to the verb. With the person agreement on the object in the verb. So we would have that pronoun. So it would be saying to slap them, because I don't think we're say it's English pronouns, right? So like to settings, webcam. Okay, there we go. Sorry. We're now on my webcam, which is, oh, wow, this really is worse quality. We're going to wrap up soon, though, as soon as we finish this bit. So it's fine. I think my camera might have just died, or it might have a 2-hour limit. Did I just hit 2 hours? I think I hit 2 hours because I had this turned on beforehand. So maybe that's something to keep in mind. But yeah, so it would be to slap him, and then John in the accusative case would mean to slap John. I think that makes sense as a way to do that, because then it's like, it keeps all your bits and bobs together correctly, or bits and johns as it would. You could also go to slap a man, third singular object, John accusative. Yes, that would make sense. So we could either have a pronoun or a common noun. Both would probably be correct. And then you would have the actual proper noun in the accusative case. Yes, I think that makes sense. For example, for under, it would be the subessive case. Subessive. I'm going to need to Google that. I have not heard that before. Subessive. Finnish has agglutination, but it's mainly on nouns as far as I'm aware. Oh, okay. Okay, that's cool. If you want to leave the proper noun uninflected, I've seen proper noun be followed by the correctly inflected pronoun to mark it. That could be an option too. So it'd be like John, him, like potentially. Oh no! Wait, can you not hear me at all? Oh no, it is back. Okay, you said it's back. Okay, yes. Okay. Then you could incorporate the pronoun and leave the proper noun 0 marked. Okay, so I could do any form of that. The subject doesn't often come into it. Like if you're issuing commands to magic, the subject is the magic itself, right? Or am I missing something here? So normally the subject it's the spirit you're talking about, which would normally actually be dropped, but it's still like conceptually there. So if I'm saying, like if the whole verb or if the whole spell is, I'm just going to say fire spirit, pretend it's the name of the actual fire spirit, like fire spirit, I command you, or I command, and then the verb is you to burn this tree, right? You is still a subject marker that goes in the preverb as a prefix on that in the verb. But because we already have the like topic indicator at the beginning, right, where we have that vocative, like this is the spirit's name, right, like listen to me, then you could drop that subject marker, but it still counts conceptually as one of the nouns there, right? And so I do like the idea of not even considering it like it's not even necessarily about the number of nouns, but it's like you can have the direct subject and you can have the direct object incorporated. But if you have any indirect ones, those have to be pushed out, because even though we're not including the subject, it's pushed out. Let's see. Yeah. Subject is already indicated. Yeah. Yep. Okay. Yep. Oh, wait. I should actually read ahead a little bit. Subessive case is pretty rare cross-linguistically. I think it's only found in some of the Caucasian languages, which I should also note are some of the absolute strangest languages in their own right. Well, strangeness is always a plus here. So I will definitely Google that. But yes, I think this is a good place to stop today. What I will do is I will try to write this all up in, I don't know if we'll do Photoshop. I may find another way to do it or try and figure out why my computer failed. But I'll figure out a way to like have that written up where we have all those little pieces, and then we can probably start working through sort of like we did here, where we really start breaking them down. And I might even we might even start coming up with some of those affixes, I think, because I think we're kind of far enough along where like we kind of understand, I think, most of the concepts. Once we get to the more complicated ones, we can figure out how those are going to tie in with what we've already said or like the rules. And we can start coming up with the actual things as a, like, not that this is what we need to do, but when I was playing around with this before, I started coming up with some of them. And oh gosh, wait, it's on the web. You guys probably can't read this at all, can you? I don't think you can read that at all, but these are the ones I started playing with for what the different things would be, just like a few examples. It doesn't completely still work, but it has some fun vibes that we can go along with. But yeah, I think that's what we'll work on next time. It means intransitive verbs will work interestingly. I don't, off the top of my head, know what an intransitive verb is, so I'm just going to leave that for the element of surprise later when I figure out what that means. Actually write that down though. Yes, but I really appreciate everyone who's been watching the stream and helping me out, because this is very much so new and overwhelming to me that I completely dropped all conlanging in general like a year ago when I first started learning about it, because it's a lot, and grammar is hard for me, and remembering the words are hard for me. So the fact that now I have like the Discord community and like people here that I can like stream this and like get thoughts and feedback on has like literally made conlanging like doable for me, because otherwise it's just way too overwhelming. So I really appreciate it. I'm really bad with like saying things like that, but like I really do appreciate it. So thank you very much, everyone. Oh, intransitive have a valency of 1, no object. Okay, yes. Yes, potentially. Bird with no object. Yeah. But yeah, so thank you, everybody. I will probably schedule the next one soon. I don't know exactly when yet. I'll figure that out later. But yeah, thank you, everyone. I hope you have a wonderful Sunday, and I will hopefully see a lot of you in the next one.